On the latest in London, Isabel Hilton, founder of China Dialogue, visiting professor at King's College London. In Islamabad, Muhammad Irfan Khan, professor and founder of the Department of Environmental Science at the International Islamic University. In Beijing, Ma Jun, director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs and also founder of the Blue Map app in China. Ladies and gentlemen, so much welcome to the program. Long time no see. But we should say the Water Conference United Nations organizes also is once in a decade. In fact, Isabel, it is about checking how things are going between the year 2008 and 2028. This is almost like a midterm check. So how are things from your perspective?
Climate impacts are mounting, populations are growing, we have all sorts of problems of desertification, of pollution, of flooding, and frankly, governments are not giving it the attention that it deserves. So this is a very welcome check, you know, a kind of stock take on where we've got to, because at this rate, we are really not going to meet the 2030 goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, certainly as far as water is concerned.
Dr. Ma, your thoughts?
At this moment, with some major efforts made and some improvement actually occurred in some parts of the world, but overall, you know, the global population is still increasing, and now we have 8 billion people, and as a result, in the global south, we will still have more than 1 billion people worldwide lack access to water, and some 2.7 billion live in water stress areas, and when it comes to pollution, we have more than 2 billion exposed to this, and sanitation, mostly water-related sanitation, not very, you know, also 2.5 billion. So globally, this SDG related to water is mostly about you know, human health and well-being. When it comes to that, both the water quantity and the quality have a major impact, and part of that is because, you know, in many areas of the world, progress lag behind.
Professor Khan, to you, what are the priorities?
If you consider from 2015 to 2030, the goal set target, we are almost halfway through. This is 2023. And now this week conference in the New York that we're going to map, that is obviously a very good result in that we have not yet made that progress that we should have made. Particularly the governance related issues that should be given the priority, because whatever you provide, either water and sanitation or water resource management or the development of the water resources for that thing, it all one way or the other depend on your governance system. So I think if we establish a good water governance system, that can definitely help to establish water and sanitation and water resources development both. So in my take, I think the governance should be the priority.
Now, what we are seeing right now is a complicated issue, of course, but think about the possibility that some even suggest about the so-called the Paris moment, meaning that during this conference, we're likely to have some major progress in terms of global commitment and also implementation plans of global commitment. Isabel, do you see that is happening?
Well, I don't at the moment. It would be wonderful if it did happen. You know, the Paris moment took a great deal of effort in the run-up to Paris, and it was a very different moment in terms of geopolitics. French Diplomats put an enormous amount of work into it, making sure that there were no obstacles that people hadn't known about, trying to resolve issues before they got to the conference. And without that sort of input, these very complicated conferences tend to produce statements, but not really plans for action, and sometimes not even statements that everyone can agree on. And the difficulty that I see at the moment is it's the old problem of the world being distracted by the urgent at the cost of the important. So it would be wonderful if there was a Paris moment, but I'm really not sure that we're going to get there.
It's a dilemma, isn't it, Ms. Hilton, that on the one hand, the world expects global challenges to be a common ground for everyone to work on and therefore rebuild trust, even out of very complicated geopolitical situation. But on the other hand, as a result of complicated geopolitical situation, there is very little trust, there's little momentum for cooperation, and it takes a long time for quote-unquote allies to find one another. I'm here not talking about political or geopolitical allies, but rather allies for global challenges, to deal with those global challenges. Ms. Hilton.
Absolutely, and if these things are not addressed, then you get further conflict. So if you look, for example, at the fate of the UN Watercourses Convention, which is designed to manage transboundary rivers fairly, equitably, sustainably. South Asia, for example, has 6-7 great transboundary rivers and no parties to the convention. So, you have rivers like the Brahmaputra, the famous example, it spent a lot of its life on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. It goes through the Great Bend, then it enters into India, it ends up in the Bay of Bengal. This is a river that needs, that should be the basis for international cooperation rather than tension. And if we can't get that cooperation, then we will continue to see existing tensions exacerbated by anxiety about water.
But when it comes to water, it's even more difficult because water usually is something more local. So it's a kind of more like a local challenges and the discharge of wastewater in one area will not easily directly impact the quality of the water of the other part of the world. So that's that making it even more difficult for the world to come together on this. But still, I think this UN meeting is so important. I'm afraid that we won't be able to see a Paris Agreement, but this is a very key step to draw global attention on this issue that matters to the human beings. So I think still this is a very important part. As Professor Khan said, governance. We need the first step toward a proper governance is to draw attention, recognition on this issue.
Dr. Ma, I remember very well you started your environmental protection career by focusing on the water for a long time in China. And then you move on to deal with the smogs. Of course, as you and your colleagues beautifully established what they call the Blue app, right? Blue
Map.
Blue Map app, meaning, the clear days of Beijing or Shanghai, you're monitoring that. But why key environmentalists like you are also moving on from water issue to other issues? Is it because of a competition of urgency, or is it because the impact of your work is not necessarily going to be clearly assessed?
When we founded IPE, our organization, we have 28% of China's monitored sections of rivers and lakes in a category of worse than category 5. Basically, the water is running black and good for no use, and only 40% or less are below category 3, meaning through treatment you can still drink them, touch them, and at that time 300 million people did not have access to safe drinking water. So we need to focus on this issue. And as Professor Khan said, governance is very important. And I trust that transparency, the worse than category 5 monitor, the proportion have dropped to about 1%. So now, much less people did not have safe access to drinking water. It's a great success in China. So it's not like we give up on this issue, but we continue to work on the water issue. And of course, it's a multi-stakeholder approach to continue to work on this issue. Having said that, our mission is far from accomplished. I just came back from a trip to the Han River, Our water source, in Beijing today, every 10 cups we drink, 7 of them comes from 1,200 kilometers away. So it shows that such a mega efforts have been made, but behind that, a lot of sacrifice by the local people and impact, and we need to recognize that, and we need to manage this in a more sustainable way.
Go to Professor Khan. You are also from developing country. I see you and Dr. Ma keep on quoting one another earlier, particularly the word governance. Now, what China has done over the past decades as a developing country, one of the largest, could some parts of it be of any use or reference to other developing economies like yours?
You see, like this, what we have been talking before, like Paris Agreement, I don't expect that thing, because when we talk about Paris Agreement, about climate change and emission and these things, economic operators, they are playing the role because of the automobile industry, the fossil fuel industry, they have the other interests. But with water, it's the poor people, right? Those who are asking water for their fundamental rights. So they are asking for the sanitation. So not that kind of things involved. So for that reason, you see, we took 20 years to make the policies, and still we have not yet established a Clean Water Act, right, for drinking water. We have made in 2009 a drinking water policy, but the policy need an instrument of law for its implementation.
I'm so glad all of you are frankly sharing your thoughts on this. Ms. Hilton, your thoughts on the same question as well. Can we be able to bring some of the experiences in one country, for example, in the Global South, and share it with others, give others an easier time to find their way out?
Absolutely. And in fact, when I think a really important thing is recognizing the co-benefits of clean water. Clean water and access to water is the foundation of public health. And although, the investment can be heavy, the benefits are enormous, because you don't have your population sick. You don't have your children skipping school to carry water, which happens in a great deal of the Global South. The children spend, much of their day fetching and carrying water at the expense of their education. And, Majun's point about governance, Majun is too modest to say so, but his organization played an extraordinary role in raising awareness of the issue, in bringing transparency to the data, and getting the beginnings of good governance established in China. Because when one of the extraordinary things that IPEE did, when it was very difficult to get data, when you didn't know who was polluting, when you didn't know actually what was in the water mostly, they identified enterprises that just went on paying fines from court cases. They were being prosecuted. They went on paying fines repeatedly. And what that meant, what that told you, was that the fines were way too low. It was cheaper to pay the fines and regard it as a bit of a business tax than to install proper treatment plants and then to run those treatment plants with all the associated costs. So Majun's work and the work of IPE resulted in legislation that dramatically raised those fines. And that's, one of the many transformative measures. That lesson can easily be carried over to any industrializing emerging economy. It's absolutely critical not to make the mistake of polluting first and then trying to clean up later. It's always more expensive. It always has other costs in, as I say, public health and education. And, you know, the example of what was done in China is readily transferable.
You see, when you have water resources development, so we have, like in Pakistan, ample amount of water that can be tapped for water resources management to develop hydropower. That is the cheap, clean energy without any emission. And that energy can ensure you not only the water security by managing water, your energy security. And with this energy security, like desalination plants, that need also energy. That you want another water treatment plant, then you need another kind of energy. So energy that can be generated through hydropower is the cheap and clean, and then we have resources. But we are heading towards the solar and wind expensive options. Taking care of the water resource management, we can have like water security, food security we can have for the agriculture purpose, and absolute the energy security. For these three security together, I always call them the environmental security. So environmental security, in fact, starts from your water security. And water security, it comes from your the urban center, water supply, sanitation, wash, these kind of things. And when you go to agriculture, you need for the irrigation purpose. When you go to industrial, you need water supply work, and then water treatment. After treatment, throwing back to the rivers and the streams. Without treatment, we are telling it. So in this case, this is like a vicious cycle. And again, the industrialists, they are not interested to play their role. They consider this is an externalities. What we're talking about, internalize these externalities for the sake of environment, for clean water, for your future generations. So this really a lack of awareness at all level. I don't call it awareness, it is basically lack of sensitization. They're not sensitive to these issues. They know sometimes, but they don't sensitize. They're not sensitive enough to understand its importance.
Professor Khan, Ms. Hilton, and Mr. Ma, thank you so much for joining us.